Jessica Collins stepped out of her luxury car and walked confidently into the towering headquarters of Sterling Enterprises. At 29 years old, she was the company's youngest senior manager and the daughter of its founder, William Collins. She was intelligent, ambitious, and admired by many people, but she also carried a dangerous habit. She judged people according to their appearance, their clothes, and the amount of money they earned. To Jessica, success defined a person's value. As she entered the lobby one rainy morning, she noticed an older man mopping the marble floor near the reception desk. His uniform was faded, and his work shoes were badly worn. He smiled politely as she approached, but before he could move aside, Jessica accidentally stepped into the wet area and nearly slipped. Her expensive coffee spilled onto her white jacket. "Watch what you're doing!" she shouted angrily. The old man immediately lowered his head. "I'm very sorry, miss. I placed a warning sign there, but perhaps you didn't see it." Jessica looked at the small yellow sign standing a few feet away, but her anger prevented her from admitting her mistake. "People like you should learn to do your jobs properly," she said coldly. "This building deserves better service." Several employees standing nearby looked uncomfortable, but nobody spoke. The old man simply smiled politely and continued cleaning the floor. His name was Michael Harrison, and although nobody knew it, his story was far more extraordinary than anyone could imagine. Over the following weeks, Jessica continued treating Michael as though he were invisible. Sometimes she ignored his greetings. Sometimes she criticized his work in front of other employees. One afternoon, she entered the company cafeteria with a group of executives and noticed Michael eating lunch alone. One of the managers smiled and said, "That old janitor always seems happy no matter what happens." Jessica laughed quietly. "Maybe that's because he has nothing important to worry about." The executives laughed, and Jessica felt proud of herself. Michael glanced toward their table, smiled, and quietly returned to his meal. Meanwhile, serious problems were beginning to affect Sterling Enterprises. The company had recently lost several important clients, profits were falling, and investors were becoming increasingly concerned about the future. William Collins, who had spent more than 30 years building the company, was growing older and wanted to retire. Rumors quickly spread throughout the organization that a new chief executive officer would soon be appointed. Jessica believed she would receive the position. After all, she had spent years preparing for the role, and she was the founder's daughter. One evening, William invited Jessica into his office. "I've been thinking carefully about the future of this company," he said. Jessica smiled confidently. "I know. Everyone is expecting your announcement." William nodded slowly. "Perhaps. But before I make my decision, I want you to remember something. Leadership isn't about controlling people. It's about serving them." Jessica smiled politely. "I understand." William looked at her thoughtfully. "Do you really?" Jessica didn't answer. A week later, every employee gathered inside the enormous conference hall. Excitement filled the room as everyone waited for William Collins to reveal the company's new leader. Jessica sat proudly in the front row, wearing an elegant black dress and an expression of complete confidence. William stepped onto the stage as the audience applauded loudly. He thanked everyone for their years of dedication before beginning his speech. 32 years ago, I started this company with the help of a remarkable friend," he said. "Together, we built Sterling Enterprises from a small office with only 5 employees into the successful organization you see today." Jessica listened patiently, wondering what this story had to do with the announcement. William smiled mysteriously. "Many years ago, my friend decided to step away from the business. However, he remained one of our largest shareholders. Recently, he returned because he wanted to understand how people within this company treated one another." Suddenly, the doors at the back of the hall slowly opened. Everyone turned around in confusion. Jessica's eyes widened in disbelief. Michael, the janitor, entered the room. But he no longer wore his old uniform. Instead, he was dressed in an elegant navy blue suit. His shoes shone brightly beneath the lights, and his confident smile immediately transformed the atmosphere inside the hall. Jessica stared at him in complete shock. William raised his hand and smiled proudly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce Michael Harrison, the new Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Enterprises." The audience gasped. Jessica's mouth fell open. "That's impossible," she whispered. Michael calmly walked onto the stage and shook William's hand. William turned toward the audience once again. Michael helped create this company many years ago. Recently, he decided to work here as a janitor because he wanted to observe how employees behaved when they believed nobody important was watching. The room remained silent. Michael stepped forward. "I learned many valuable lessons during my time here," he said calmly. "Some people treated me with kindness and respect. Others judged me according to my appearance." His eyes slowly settled upon Jessica. She immediately lowered her head. Her face became pale as she remembered every cruel comment she had made. The following morning, Michael officially assumed his position as Chief Executive Officer. Throughout the building, employees greeted him warmly. Later that afternoon, Jessica stood nervously outside his office before finally gathering enough courage to knock on the door. "Come in," Michael said. Jessica slowly entered the room. "I wanted to apologize," she said quietly. Michael smiled kindly and invited her to sit down. "I treated you terribly," she continued. "I judged you because of your clothes and your job. I thought wealth and power made people important. I was wrong." Michael folded his hands and nodded. "Many people make that mistake." Jessica looked down at the floor. "Can you forgive me?" Michael smiled warmly. "Of course. Everyone deserves a second chance." Over the following months, Jessica worked harder than she ever had before. She spoke kindly to employees, listened carefully to their ideas, and gradually earned the respect of the people around her. One evening, she noticed Michael carrying a box of office supplies through the hallway. "You could ask someone else to do that," she said. Michael smiled. "No task is too small for someone who wants to become a great leader." Jessica smiled in return. Years later, employees still told the story of the proud young executive who mocked a poor janitor, only to discover that he would become her chief executive officer. From that day forward, Jessica never judged another person by appearance again because she finally understood that true greatness comes from humility, kindness, and respect rather than wealth, titles, or power.